Hey again, it's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. So I am really excited to share with you guys that I finally have all of my garden plans done for the year. And so that is when I want to start sharing with you guys in this video. I do everything on the computer if you have seen videos in the past. And so what I will be doing as I talk about all of my planting beds is I'll put pictures of the actual area up on the screen, but then I will also put my diagrams up on the screen and tell you the size and measurements of each bed so that you guys can see that as well. And if I know plant spacing off the top of my head, I will tell you that in the videos too. But part one, I'm going to split this into two different videos because otherwise I think it would just get way too long. So this video, part one, I'm going to share all of my in-ground plantings. And in part two, which you will probably see in a couple days, I'm going to go over what I'm planting in my hoop house. That I want to go over in a separate video because I'm going to do multiple plantings in there. And also that is a totally different growing environment because it's undercover. So that will be part two. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into this and I'm going to go through this somewhat quickly so this video doesn't get forever long, but enough in detail so that you guys can definitely get something out of it. And if you have questions, comment below. I always try to answer as many questions as I can. All right, so the first area that I'm going to go over is my very first planting area. This is the space that I opened up first 4 years ago already, and this is the growing space that is in between my building and the neighboring building, which is now also my building. This is roughly a 30 by 60 area. I have it formatted as a rectangle, and there is a rectangle kind of loop path that goes through it. So there is there's two side planting beds and then one long one in the middle. So now that you've seen a few pictures of the area, here is the diagram for this year's planting. So as you can see, I like to color code things because I can tell the difference in the different varieties of plants. So let's just start in the middle. This planting area is roughly 13 to 14 inches wide by about 36 inches long. And you can see I have numerous rows in this area. Up at the top, we start with dahlias, then we move down to zinnias, and then a patch of snapdragons and a narrow patch of lisianthus. Now these beds are all 3-foot beds with 2 feet of walking space in between. Dahlias, I'm estimating I can fit about 24 dahlias in this space based on how I planted them last year. And how I space my dahlias is 18 inches this way and 12 inches this way. So that would give me 12 dahlias times 2 in a patch, so 24. Zinnias are a 9-inch spacing. Snapdragons, I like to plant at about a 4 to 5-inch spacing. Those I have found can be planted much closer together. And then at the very end, you'll see that little narrow strip of lisianthus. That is just based on the number of lisianthus that I have, and I also plant lisianthus very close at about 4 inches for spacing. So this area, if you remember from the photos, this is where the greenhouse was. So we moved the greenhouse out. It's now mounted to concrete, and this area is going to be utilized as a full planting area this year, which I'm really excited about. Much more growing space. Now let's go to the bed that is on the south side of my studio building, so the north side of this lot. It's right next to the metal building. It gets lots of heat during the summer, and if you remember this fall, this is the spot where I planted all of those peonies. The one part of it, I have 22 peonies planted. They are in the middle and the back of the bed, so there is about a, I would say 12-inch area of bare dirt at the very front of the bed. And my plan is to plant a line of rudbeckia plants at the front. I can plant them a little closer to the front. They'll still be spaced fine from the peonies, but they're a perennial in my area, and so those will get established. I'm probably going to do a shorter variety like Sahara so they don't completely take over the area, but I'll have a nice line of the Sahara rudbeckia that will come back every year, and then I also will be able to utilize that little patch. I like to pack as much into a small space as possible. I like to utilize every square inch of the area, so a little line of rudbeckia that will come back year after year will be perfect in that spot. Now in the top corner of this diagram you will see HH. That is an existing hollyhock that I leave. I really like the height in that corner next to the fence. Moving down from the peonies and the rudbeckia, you will see statice. This is where I have planted the statice for the last couple years, although that bed shared the statice and some feverfew. I cleaned that feverfew out in the fall because I wanted to just kind of clean it up a bit and start over and have all of my statice or most of my statice in the same area. So that whole area is going to be statice now. The big black square is my air conditioner. And then there's a little patch of yarrow planted in front of that air conditioner. It has question marks in front of it because I may or may not leave that. I'm not quite sure. And then just below the air conditioner, or to the right of the air conditioner, I am going to reestablish that area for rudbeckia and feverfew. Both come back in my area, which is a zone 5, and so I'm hoping I can establish that as a perennial area as well, get some more rudbeckia than I need, more feverfew than I need, and there also is a post of my pergola in that spot, and then that way I'll just have kind of an established perennial patch in that area that is a little harder to harvest. So across the pathway from that is my celosia patch. Last year, part of this patch, I did direct seed some cress. It didn't really grow there very well. It just got away from me. So I'm just going to make this whole patch celosia and keep it simple this year. Moving around the garden, you will see the 2 purple squares with the question marks. That whole area is where my raspberries were. I have since then removed that fence line because we are doing work on the building next door. The construction crew who will be tuck pointing that building will need to get through there to do that in the spring. That also is where we carried the greenhouse out of. So those raspberries are getting moved to a whole nother space, which I will share with you later in this video. So with leaving a walkway there, there may be some space where I can plant something. So those are question marks for now. And then the other bed where you can see the 4 blue dots, that is next to the building that we are renovating. The 4 blue dots are existing hydrangea bushes, which I probably will cut back more than usual this year. The building is getting tuck pointed first thing in the spring, which is awesome. But because all that planting space is right next to the building, it's kind of up in the air what I'm going to be able to do with that. Nothing right away in the spring because it's going to get trampled and there's going to be concrete falling on it and all the good stuff. I'm hoping that your hydrangeas are okay, so I will probably have to prune those back more than normal. We moved to the area of yarrow, which says yarrow question mark. That is an established yarrow patch. I don't know how well that's going to do through the tuck pointing, so I may be replanting it. The green square at the top, you'll see Ami Kamadara. That is an area that is currently landscape fabricked with holes burned in it that I grew bupleurum in the last couple years. I'm thinking if I put Ami and Dara in that spot this year, that's something I can easily mid-season direct sow and still get some to harvest in the fall. So that particular spot is up in the air just because of the construction, but I still think it'll be a usable space this year. Now, the cottage garden area, as I call it, that is on the outside of the fence, I'm going to also be redoing that a little bit this year. There's some established Russian sage, some established echinacea and rudbeckia and yarrow. All of that will probably be staying. But there is some shorter yarrow that's going to be getting ripped out. There also has been areas where I've planted annuals in the past years. I would really like to fill that as much as possible with perennials that come back for cutting so that I don't have to plant annuals in there every year. It is landscape fabricked and mulched, so I would kind of just like to keep it a perennial bed. So the things that I'm going to be adding in there are more rudbeckia, the varieties that I like, such as Cherokee Sunset, not Goldilocks, but one of the other gold ones. I'll put it on the screen. I can't think of it right now. And of course, Sahara, which is my favorite. Did I say yarrow? I'm going to be planting more yarrow in there, but the correct height of yarrow. I may sow some feverfew in there towards the front because feverfew doesn't get quite as tall, but comes back in my area. The one thing that is an annual that I know I'm going to plant in there is a type of celosia that I use as a filler. I used to buy it at garden centers every year, but last fall I noticed Johnny's had it as one of their new varieties. It gets little pink flowers, but for me, if at all, it's very much at the end of the season and I can clip them off to keep it branching. The foliage is dark, and this is the foliage that I use in my jelly jars for my big end of the year market. So, this celosia grows pretty much like a shrub for me. So I will be putting at the back of that bed along the fence a line of this celosia filler, as I call it. I also have a few spots at home where I plan to put some more Rudbeckia and some of that celosia filler. All right, so that is the fenced in garden, as I call it. Not completely fenced in anymore, but I still will call it that. So moving on to another diagram, we're gonna hop out to the hoop house garden. This is along the west side of the hoop house. This was a brand new planting area last year, and oh my gosh, did it give me so much more planting space. Overall, this is about a 18 by 28 space, so lots of growing space. I grew a variety of things in it last year, but this year I'm simplifying. So first off, you'll notice a big patch of zinnias. That is the same place that I had zinnias last year. I don't even know how many plants that I fit in that space. 28 feet long, and I know I had at least 7 or 8 rows of zinnias. So lots. That's going to be zinnias this year. Moving over towards the left, you'll see a big orange patch. That is a space that is not landscape fabric. It's all open, bare dirt. Last year I had some sunflowers in there. I had gladiolas. I had miscellaneous direct sown things. I had some of the celosia filler, and I had cresspedia. This year, it's going to be all sunflowers, and I figure in that space I can get 5 succession plantings of 200 sunflowers each. So that is the plan for that spot. Then there's one more planting row to the left of that, much smaller, 28 long, only 3 rows wide at 9-inch spacing. This is going to be all of the columbine that I just started. And columbine will grow on throughout the season this year. It will not flower this year, but it will be an early flowering plant next year. So I'm planning ahead. So I have about 80 plants that I can fit in that area. And then at the bottom, you'll see a feverfew patch. That is an existing feverfew patch from last year. There is green coming up in that whole area, so I know that they are alive, so I'm keeping that spot. So this area will be largely utilized this year. Simplified, but so many plants. Okay, so then next to that, directly to the west of that, I have 8 4x4 beds that I put in, I think 2 seasons ago, but I really only grew in them last year. Because these beds are separate from in-ground plantings and a little bit smaller, these are kind of areas where I like to do trial plants. So it's something, if it's something that I've never grown before or I'm trying for the first time, I like to plant just a little 4x4 patch of it in these beds to see if I like it. And if I don't like it, I haven't wasted a bunch of space in the garden. And so I have 8 plants listed that I'm going to be filling these beds with this year. Now, most of these are ones that I haven't grown before or I just sampled and I still want to kind of trial them. A couple are ones that I have grown before, but I just know that I don't need very much of. So the first one is Clary Sage. That's going to be a new one for me this year. Saponaria, a new one for me this year. Chinese Forget-Me-Not. And then Yellow Chamomile. All 4 of those are going to be new for me this year. I'm going to use Cresspedia in one of those areas because I love that. I grew it last year, but I don't think I need a ton of it. Mountain Mint was one that I had maybe 4 plants of last year, and I really liked it. So I'd like a little bit more this year. Honeywort, let me tell you, Honeywort can get completely out of control. I grew it on the west side of my greenhouse last year. It completely took over that area so much that I didn't have pathways. It was really crazy. So I need a contained area for honeywort that I can easily stake and support, and I don't need a ton of it. So I'm going to try honeywort in one of those 4x4 beds. And the last thing I'm going to put in those 4x4 beds is amaranth. And some of you are probably thinking, oh, that's kind of a weird choice. I don't use a ton of amaranth. I like to grow amaranth very close together as single stalks. So I figure I can get quite a bit in a 4x4 bed at single stalks, and that will probably be what I need to harvest for the season. All right, we have a couple of spaces left. One is that bed on the east end of the hoop house where I grew sunflowers last year. I also grew some statice and some mahogany splendor hibiscus. I'm going to kind of be doing the same thing in that spot this year, except I'm nixing the statice. That's going to go all in another spot, which I had mentioned previous. I am going to be growing the mahogany splendor hibiscus in that bed this year. I think I grew 9 plants last year. This year I'm going to up that to 15. I'd like a little bit more. And then the whole rest of that open bed is going to be for sunflowers for my biggest year-end market. Last year I grew sunflowers for that year-end market in that bed. I grew maybe 400 and they all bloomed early. I was able to save some of them, but I had to utilize some others that I thought would be later. They bloomed so early. So this year, I just need to plan a little different. I need to start planting mid-July, and I think do weekly plantings and fill up that bed, and then I should have sunflowers right when I need them for that big market. So that bed is going to be pretty simple. The other in-ground areas that I'm going to be planting are in the new areas on the new property. So last year you saw me create a huge square bed. I don't even know the measurements of it, 40 by 40 or something like that. And I started to plant peonies in there and other perennials. I have yarrow, peonies, I have a viburnum, some daisies, echinacea, just some random things like that. Some hollyhocks just for looks. I would like to continue developing that with some extra perennials or extra seedlings, maybe just kind of putting them in there to fill up the area. But last fall, I had another truckload of topsoil brought in, and that was all spread and placed on the north side of that bed. So I have an area that is 12 by 43 feet long. So it's a long one. And this is all brand new, nice black topsoil, and it's ready to be planted. So here is the layout that I am planning for that area. The top of the screen is east, and the little white strip I think is going to be kind of along the alley, just leave it as gravel. But then I would like to plant an area of shrubs that get somewhat tall to kind of act as a natural fence. Then from there, we have 4-foot planting beds. Well, 2 of them are 3 foot. The top and the bottom are 3 foot because of how it was spaced. And then 2-foot walkways. And so these are the plants that I'm going to be planting in that area. Gomphrena, Eryngium, Ageratum, Fama scabiosa, both the blue and the white, strawflower, the Amazon dianthus, and then bread seed poppies. I purchased those, the pods, from another flower farmer friend last year, and I loved them. I need them in my garden. So I will have my own patch of those this year. And I'm really excited to have all that planting space. So all of those varieties are getting either 3 or 4 foot beds that are 12 feet long. That will give me so many more flowers just in that spot than what I had last year. So if you add up all my planting space, gosh, I'm going to have a really good harvest this year, I think. I'm really excited. I'm thrilled. This year, my goal is to be very diligent with landscape fabric, planting in the holes, keeping on control of weed pressure, staking everything. I need to try a different method of staking, just so that everything is very easy maintenance. I also plan to run more drip lines and soaker hoses and just kind of make things easier on the maintenance. That is key. So if I get things started in the spring correctly, you know, I think I'll be able to take care of it even with the building renovations. Last year, I was a little disappointed because some of the areas got away from me. You know, we added so much more garden space and I had such a late start planting it because we did not get it started earlier in the season like I liked. The hoop house that I wanted to get in and plant in March or April didn't get planted till May. And then I was just kind of like a chain reaction behind on everything. So this year I have very strict planting schedules that I would like to follow. I will share all of those in videos with you guys, and hopefully I can really take advantage of all of the space possible that I have. So anyway, that is the plan for all of my in-ground gardens. I hope this was helpful and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And again, if you guys have any questions, comment down below. I'll try to answer them. And the next video that you guys will see will be my hoop house plan. So I hope you guys are having a great week, a good winter, and we're all probably getting ready for spring. So stay tuned for a lot more. We'll see you soon.